She is a certified specialist in renal nutrition through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and a certified plant-based dietitian through Cornell University. She's the wife of a 20-year veteran of the United States Air Force and the mother of 4 exceptional children. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm back. Were y'all all here last time? Yes. Okay, well, if you weren't, I gave a little caveat, and I like to do this. I'm from Mississippi, so if y'all need a translator for my accent, just raise your hand. I can tell you what I just said. But anyway, I also said this, I feel so honored to be here, and I'm honored that you're sitting in this class. And you just heard her say that I've spoken at a lot of kidney conferences, and this one is just, y'all are just different. Y'all are amazing. I mean, have you ever seen a group of people so connected and just really care about each other and know each other? And I'm just blown away by you. So thank you for letting me be here. I consider it an honor. So anyway, also, if you're wondering about the 20-year Air Force veteran, he's right there. He's going to be mad at me, but there he is. So he's here. He's always supporting me, and I appreciate him. Last time a little bit on inflammation, and this has been, I actually speak for a company, you may have heard of, actually y'all may have heard of this company, Kate Farms. They have like nutritional supplements and tube feedings for children. Anyway, if you hadn't, go Google it. It's a really wonderful company, but I speak for them, and every time I talk it's on inflammation because they're just so interested in that, and it's kind of a big deal really for the population at large, but especially for people whose kidneys are damaged. So that's what we're going to talk about in this session. So let me get my little clicker. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to define inflammation, talk about what even is this and why are we talking about it. Its relation to protein-distilling diseases, contributing factors. So some of this will be repetitive if you were in the last class, but it'll go in a little bit deeper this time. But we've got dysbiosis, acidosis, and proteinuria, and then different supplements, because a lot of people ask me about supplements, and you have to be pretty careful with those, but we will talk about a couple here. So let's talk about what is inflammation anyway. So this is your body's defense mechanism. If you are here because you or your child has an autoimmune condition, you probably know a whole lot about inflammation and the body's defense mechanism. But under normal conditions, this is a protective and physiological response to outside stimuli. So when your body encounters an offending agent like the flu virus or COVID or some sort of foreign material, a stomach virus, your body will activate your immune system. And what it does then, your immune system sends out first responders, and then it will call out for more responders. These are called like cytokines. So you may have heard of things like interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis factor, things like this. But these cytokines are basically, they just call out for more troops. They just say, hey, you know what, we've got an inflammation problem going on here. We need more troops to come in. And so then they keep bringing in more and more and more of these inflammatory cells. So there's 2 types of inflammation. There's acute and there's chronic. Okay, acute inflammation is, I cut my finger, it turned red. The body sends inflammatory cells to heal that, and then they go away. That's how it should work, okay? But then there's chronic inflammation. And this is when the body continues to send out these inflammatory cells, even when there's no outside danger. And so in chronic conditions like chronic kidney disease, no matter really the cause, I heard one of the doctors say that, I just think it's so interesting that they were saying, the causes, the treatment is very similar despite the cause, and that's true of nutrition as well. But anyway, so no matter the cause, in kidney disease, no matter why you have it, there is this chronic inflammation. It's this low, persistent gray, low inflammation that just kind of continues perpetuating in the body, and it's not something that we want to continue. And so you saw this slide if you were here the last time, so we'll just run back over this. So in our body, we have these oxidation reactions going on all the time. It's normal metabolism, okay? It happens in everybody. When you go exercise, you produce more of these, and exercise is a good thing. So these are, the one in the middle is a free radical or an oxidant. It is missing an electron in the outer shell. So this is chemistry. You probably are like, I hated chemistry in high school. Please don't take me back there. We're just going to figure it in. But anyway, it's highly reactive. And so what it does is it will go and take electrons from stable cells. And then this, over time, it can become a chain reaction because now that one's unstable. And then now that one's unstable. And so over time, it can damage DNA. This is the beginning of damage to the endothelial lining in your arteries and veins from cardiovascular disease, and then now you're laying down plaque. This is the beginning of cancer, and this is the beginning of just a process going on in kidney disease. It happens in everyone's body. So we want to inhibit this. We want to stop this process. And so what antioxidants do is they have an extra electron. And so what they will do then is they will basically sacrifice themselves that extra electron to stabilize the oxidant or the free radical, stop the whole process. So we want a lot of antioxidants. And so this is oxidative stress is what's going on here when I'm talking to you about. And you want this to be balanced in the body. But we know that in kidney disease, you have certain inflammatory cells that are good and certain inflammatory cells that are bad. But we know that in kidney disease, this gets out of balance. So what else did I want to say to y'all about this? I know. So with kidney disease, and this is something I said about before, is that people go on the internet and they start looking up things that come from the large dialysis companies that are written for dialysis patients, even though I think still a lot of that is wrong. Actually, I should have said this in the first class, but I had someone come up to me after who's on dialysis. Dialysis patients still need fruits and vegetables. They still need fiber. The historical education of dialysis patients in nutrition has been completely atrocious. Thankfully, it's changing slowly now, but they still need antioxidants. But you don't want to over-restrict your diet unnecessarily. Other things like diuretic use, protein energy wasting. If you go into the hospital and you don't eat for a while, you have the protein energy wasting that can increase inflammation, things such as that. So why should you even care about this? So it increases your risk for cardiovascular disease, which I just talked about, the endothelial lining of your arteries and veins. It also just, there's this milieu in kidney disease of like this malnutrition, heart disease, kidney disease, kind of vicious cycle. And it all goes on with this underlying theme of inflammation. Inflammation and low kidney function is recognized as a risk for cardiovascular disease. Risk of developing cardiovascular disease in children and young adults with advanced chronic kidney disease or end-stage renal disease is about 30 times greater than that of the age-matched population. So even in children, if you have a child that has kidney disease, they're a heart patient. That's what I always say. If you're a kidney patient, you're a heart patient. Unregulated chronic systemic inflammation is associated with increased morbidity and mortality. Like I said, there's this whole cycle of this weird malnutrition, inflammation, cardiovascular disease thing that goes on, and it contributes to anemia. So, if I have a dialysis patient, when I was in the dialysis centers, and I did the anemia management too there. And if their hemoglobin dropped off or their T-stat dropped off, just unknowingly, like, what in the world, like it was fine and now it's bad, I'm out there going, do you have an abscess tooth? Do you have a wound on your foot? I'm trying to find that source of inflammation because it's going to drive anemia out the roof. So, and then it causes the progression of kidney disease. Well, that's what we're trying to prevent, right? We don't want you to progress. We want you to stay where you are already better. So, protein spilling diseases and inflammation. So, I can't go through every little single one of these and talk about why that there would be more inflammation in these diseases, but just know, as I said before, and like I heard someone else say, that there is, despite the cause, there is this underlying theme of inflammation. It's and the overarching goals are similar. So one thing about protein spilling is that I was asking a nephrologist this the other day. Like I said, okay, like people with an autoimmune or immune system problems can cause kidney damage, right? But then if you damage that glomerular base membrane, which some of the classes I've been in talked about that. That's just I'm going to show you some pictures of it later, but it's just kind of the base that you want to be tight in your glomerulus. If you damage that and you start spilling protein, the protein you're spilling is also inflammatory. So it's like a vicious cycle kind of coming down, you know, on the kidneys. So what does that look like? So when we start talking about particularly autoimmune or any kind of immune response, you can begin to lay down these immune complexes in that glomerular-based membrane. So it looks kind of like this. And that damages what we call the podocyte or the base membrane. So if I don't know if y'all were in that class, the podocyte, some people refer to it as like the foot process. Someone this morning, I'm so thankful they said an octopus, because that's what I think it looks like, an octopus. But it kind of, you know, you've got this base membrane, and that podocyte kind of wraps around, it tightens like this. And so then when it's damaged by any one of these diseases,
it can begin to efface. Those podocytes will efface, and then eventually they can start falling off. And then now you've got openings, so then now you're spilling more protein because you've got openings where that should have been tight. Now protein is spilling through. And so I saw a lot of nephrologists use this analogy, and I think it's a really good one, is like if you have a sieve or a colander and you are trying to wash grapes, but your dog chewed on it and it's got bigger holes in it than it should have, and the grapes fall through. That's what's happening. Like the protein is coming through holes that shouldn't be that big, or they shouldn't be there. So let's talk about what contributes to inflammation. So we're going to talk about gut dysbiosis, acidosis, and proteinuria. So if you're in the first class, I'm going to go into this a little bit more in detail in this class than I had time to in the last class. But your gut, there's something called the gut-kidney axis. Your gut talks to everything in your body. And so gut microbiome 101. So what is this? On your body, you have bacteria all over your whole body. You have a skin microbiota, but what we want to talk about is the gut microbiota, because the gut, there's a bidirectional communication with your gut and your kidneys. There's a bidirectional communication with your gut and your brain. So everybody in this room, if you have kidney disease or you're a parent or not, everybody in here should be very concerned about the health of their gut. And so what it is it's just the combination of the bacteria, the viruses, the protozoa, everything that's in your gut. And the intestinal microbiota is kept inside the colon by this single layer absorptive epithelium. So you're going to keep hearing me talk about things being tight, but you also want that to be tight there. And then there's a dynamic ecosystem that is under constant communication. This ecosystem in your gut is under constant communication with the metabolism. So you didn't know this all your life probably, but you have bacteria in your gut that's talking to everything else in your body all day long, every day, and you really want that to be healthy. So let's talk about the failing kidneys and this lining or the gut microbiota. So it's the gut microbiota, we want to think about the lining of the gut, but we also want to think about the bacteria in the gut. And so what we think goes on, and we think that kidney patients, most of them have what's called gut dysbiosis, especially the longer you get down the line of CKD. So remember that CKD is stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the further you get along the line, especially if you're holding fluid, we think that volume overload causes what we want the gut to look like is the picture on the left that's very tight. But we think that with volume overload, it begins to separate. We know this because in congestive heart failure patients, theirs begins to separate because of the distension in the fluid. People who have liver disease, they get that distension, the ascites. And so it can cause that tight junction, the lining of the gut, to separate. And the problem with that is now those bacteria begin to translocate and go all over the body, and that causes inflammation. We don't want inflammation because inflammation is going to increase the progression of kidney disease, and it's going to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. We also know that uremia, so if your kidneys are not functioning as well, as they should, particularly the further you get, the higher the stage of kidney disease, you begin to have uremic toxins. And these uremic toxins, they flood into the gut. You don't want toxins in your gut. I mean, it is speculated that these uremic toxins have a direct or indirect effect, not only on the intestinal barrier, but on the microbiota as well. And then the mucosal lining. So if you look at the inside of that picture and you see the little fingerling things, there's a layer of mucus there. And people historically in America do not eat enough fiber. The gut microbiota like to eat fiber. That you got to feed them. You feed them. So you didn't know. It sounds like you've got a pet in your stomach or something, you know. But you're feeding these bugs in there, okay? And if you don't feed them fiber, they will eat mucus. They'd rather eat fiber, but they will eat mucus. And if you don't feed them fiber, they're going to eat that mucosal lining. And then what do you have now? Well, now it's separated again. You got bacteria going all over, and now you're inflamed. And so the gut does affect your whole body, including your kidneys. And so we talked about this, that prebiotic is the food for these microbiota in your gut. Probiotic is a very confusing term because you see it everywhere. You can buy probiotics in a supplement form. You can eat probiotics in fermented foods. And then you have probiotics in your gut, but these are beneficial bacteria. And then postbiotic is what is produced by these gut microbes. Okay, so I'm gonna hammer this home, but you need fiber. Why is that? A lack of fiber creates a shortage of what we call short chain fatty acids and increased secondary bile acids. Okay, so we've talked about, and we're going to talk again about kidney toxins that are produced from the gut, but the gut also, these are also metabolites. These are the products that the gut's producing. You want short chain fatty acids because these are anti-inflammatory. So when you eat a bunch of fiber, you eat an anti-inflammatory diet, now what happens? Well, your gut microbiota start producing products that are anti-inflammatory called short-chain fatty acids. So these are acetate, butyrate, propionate, that's their names, you don't even have to remember that. But just know that these, they're very anti-inflammatory. They even have thought of using these like to treat inflammatory diseases. I really feel like there's going to be so much, there already is so much more research on the gut microbiota. Next year, if I came and gave this talk again, I'd probably tell you something totally different because more stuff just keeps coming out. But secondary bile acids are things that you don't want because these are inflammatory. So secondary bile acids, we've known for 40 years that eating plant-based diets produce just a fraction of the secondary bile acids that a meat-based diet does, about 70% less. And if you put people on a plant-based diet, the activity of these secondary bile acids is about cut in half, and within a month, their overall presence is also cut in half. So when you eat a plant-based diet, you're going to have less secondary bile acids, you're going to have more short-chain fatty acids, which is going to decrease the inflammatory overall environment of your body. And so we talked about the uremia and leaky gut. Other things that lead to altered gut microbiome is certain medications. I know you can't do anything about those, but what you can do, and this is what I love about nutrition, is and I said this in the first class, but one of the doctors here said, I know you don't necessarily like these medications. I know you necessarily don't like the side effects of these medications. And they do have side effects. But what you can do, you have power in your hands to change your diet. And you have power, and that gives you good side effects. You feel better. But also, it can't, when we're talking about these medications, if they are altering your gut, but you're proactively trying to heal your gut, then you can kind of level that out a little bit where you're not having so much of an issue. A lot of times it's a give and take, we do good, better, best. So if someone, would I tell just anyone on the planet to eat the very low protein diet that I was talking about in the first class? If you weren't in there, it's just a super low protein diet. No, I wouldn't. But if you have stage 4 kidney disease, I would, right? It's a give and take. You've got to figure out what is actually best for you. And so when I'm working with someone, I'm looking at what medications are they on, what are their stage of kidney disease, how much protein are they spilling, what is their gut like, what have they eaten their whole life, what is their weight. It's so many factors that come into this. So a lot of times when people ask me a question like, well, I have this going on and then this happened and this happened, it's like I'd have to have so much more information than that. I can give you a general answer. But anyway, you can, if you work hard on your gut, even if you're taking a medication that's altering your gut, you have to have the medication, you just do. So you do the best you can. You work on the gut. But anyway, high animal protein, and I talked about this, the direction, there's a bidirectional communication with your gut and your kidneys, and that your microbiota, we think it plays a big role in the homeostasis of kidney disease, because certain gut microbiomes will lead to certain kidney toxins. So that should be motivation to eat more plants, because if I eat this, it produces this. If I eat this, it produces this. Well, if you eat a diet high in animal protein, it's going to produce kidney toxins. One of them is called trimethylamine N oxide. It's made in the gut, cleared by the kidneys. It's made when you eat a diet high in animal protein due to the content of choline and carnitine that's in those foods. And so it is, once you eat those foods, then your gut begins to produce this kidney toxin. And so it not only does it act as a marker of kidney disease, it will cause progression of kidney disease, but it also will cause cardiovascular disease. So even if you're not a kidney patient, you don't want your gut to be producing this, because it's going to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, and you really don't want kidney toxins in your body either. If you feed a vegan a steak, they won't produce that, because whatever you're eating is feeding certain bacteria. They don't have those bacteria. They haven't been feeding them. If they kept eating a steak, they'd start producing that, but they don't even have the bacteria to produce it. So you can set up and change your microbiome pretty quick. These are two other kidney toxins, p-cressyl sulfate and indoxyl sulfate. Same thing, they're just produced after a high animal protein intake. They're kidney toxins, and plant-based diets decrease the levels by as much as 60%. Let me go back before I move into acidosis. One thing I want to tell y'all, and I didn't say this in the first class, is that there's been research on the gut, and the largest research ever performed on the gut is called the American Gut Health Project. And it was this huge study with a lot of participants over a long period of time. And do you know what they walked away with that? Here's what they walked away with, the solution to have a healthy gut. Eat 30 different fruits and vegetables in a week. So that was it, that simple. So now y'all are probably all out there thinking, there's no way in the world I'm gonna be able to eat 30 different fruits and vegetables in a week. That's not even reasonable. But here, it is a little bit, it's better than what you think. Okay, so if you go to the store and you buy a Granny Smith apple and a Honeycrisp apple, that counts as 2. If you buy kale and arugula, that counts as 2. So you see, it's just trying to get varieties. I don't tell people like, okay, at the end of the week, count up 30. Don't do that. But just try to eat just a variety, and that's going to help your gut out a lot. Another thing, a second study came out, and they said, well, that increases the number, but the diversity is really what they came away with is the diversity in the gut is from fermented foods. And so, now these are a little harder, all right? I like sauerkraut. So I'll put sauerkraut on my big massive salad that I eat every day at lunch. And so I eat, I was telling them at lunch every day I eat a bucket of salad. If you find me on Instagram, you'll see them there. But you can put all different things in your salad. But one of the things I put on there is sauerkraut because it is fermented, and I don't like a whole lot of fermented foods. This one time I went and got kimchi, and my husband told me not to do it. And if y'all like kimchi, eat it. It's really good for you, okay? But I did, and I was like, you know what? He's like, it's horrible, because he was stationed over there, and he said he could smell it when he was over there. He just didn't like it. And so I brought that to my house. This is a little side note. I brought that to my house, and I was like, wait, this isn't so bad. I'm like eating it. After about 3 bites, I couldn't eat any more, y'all. And so then I went and I threw it in the garbage can, okay? And like 30 minutes later, it was like, good gosh, what is that smell in the house? So just know, if you get kimchi and you don't like it, take it outside to the garbage. Don't throw it away in the house, because it is stout. Okay. But anyway, so those are just 2 tips to help you with your gut, is eat fermented foods and eat a variety of foods, and watch what you're putting in, because think about whenever you eat something, think, what is my gut going to produce from this, okay? All right, acid-base balance. So kidneys are responsible. There's other organs that are responsible for acid-base balance, but kidneys are super responsible for acid-base balance. So kidneys are master chemists of your blood. So they're gonna, when your blood comes through, they go, oh, we need a little of this, we need to get rid of a little of this. So they secrete hydrogen ions in the urine, they reabsorb bicarbonate back. I always look at my patients' bicarbonate levels. If they say, hey, what labs should I tell my nephrologist to get me? That's one I always tell them. I always look at it because it affects a lot of things. But if your GFR is less than 40, then this is impaired. And you don't want it to be impaired. One, because it's going to increase the progression of kidney disease. It's going to, let's see, my next slide may tell us this. But it is one of the most common consequences. It's very common for people to be acidotic. And it is linked to chronic inflammation. And it will slow progression of kidney disease. It will damage bones. It will damage muscles, all those sorts of things. Prolonged acidosis leads to interstitial fibrosis or scarring. Now, if y'all have been in the classes I've been in this week, I've heard this over and over, fibrosis, scarring, fibrosis, scarring. Once we have scarring, that nephron's gone, right? They don't come back. I hate that. I wish the kidneys were like the liver. I wish they came back. They don't. And so you want to keep inflammation down. You want to keep acidosis down. You don't want these to be scarred. When you get those inflammatory, what I was showing you in first, where the inflammatory complexes get into the kidney, you don't want that. It causes scarring. Like, we don't want scarring. We're trying to keep inflammation down. And so how does this happen? So we talked a lot about acidosis and progression of kidney disease in the first class, but this is talking about acidosis and the direct impact on inflammation. So prolonged acidosis requires an adaptive response. So if your kidneys aren't handling this well, let's say you're a later stage kidney disease and you're becoming acidotic, you're eating a lot of animal protein, there's a lot of problems. And so it's going to require a lot of adaptive responses. One thing that I haven't talked about is that it will, whenever you become acidotic, you will begin to pull calcium out of the bone. Calcium is alkaline, and you'll begin to pull calcium out of the bones into the blood. So for women especially, that's really bad. You don't want to be pulling calcium out of your bones. For anybody, that's really bad because you don't want calcium laying down in your arteries and veins. But as far as inflammation is concerned, the response to this, your body's going to have a response, and the inflammatory response to this is that you're going to produce more of something called endothelin-1. This is a potent vasoconstrictor, meaning that it causes your veins to tighten. We don't want that, right? Because that's going to increase blood pressure. But it causes fibrosis of vascular cells. So there we are back at scarring again. So that is the way that acidosis is going to increase inflammation and cause scarring. So, you know, all these things, I know it may seem confusing, and because it does to me, and I look at it and study it all the time, but just think of it all as a big cycle going on in your body. This endothelin goes, acidosis causes progression of kidney disease, causes inflammation, which causes progression of kidney disease. So it's this whole big cyclical thing, which we don't want any of. And so this is just another way of looking at that endothelin-1, which you'll see down there on your right. And this is just things that happen in the body. We like to do them almost like as a kind of a schematic, like this happens, now this happens, now this happens, now this happens, which is what this is. It really doesn't work that way. It's more like this happens, now it went up here, now it came back here, but at least gives you an idea. The other thing about acidosis, just to end this, is that, like I said before, it's going to decrease bone formation, increase bone resorption. That means bone breakdown, because your body is going to keep your blood at a certain pH. It's going to figure it out. If the kidneys aren't doing it, the bones are going to do it. It will cause muscle catabolism and decrease protein synthesis. So we definitely don't want that, especially, as we get older. You naturally lose muscle anyway as you get older, and you certainly don't want anything contributing to that. But we don't want our kids to lose muscle. And then eventually it's going to lead to increased kidney progression. Okay, proteinuria, the cause and response to inflammation. So this is what I was telling y'all before. Some of the things in kidney disease is like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like high blood pressure. Did high blood pressure cause the kidney disease, or did the kidney disease cause the high blood pressure? And the answer is yes, both. And so the same thing with proteinuria. It's like proteinuria, something damaged the kidneys that caused the proteinuria, which raises inflammation, but then the proteinuria itself raises inflammation. So it's a which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But the reason I have it's not normal. You're like, duh, I know it's not normal. But you know what? I have called on doctors before, and they're like, well, they're just spilling like 1-2 grams of protein. And I'm like, they shouldn't be spilling any protein. Like, let's get this proteinuria down. Hello, we don't want to be spilling protein. So it's not normal. It's not normal to be spilling protein. It's a marker of kidney damage. It's caused by a loss of selectivity in the glomerular barrier, which I was telling you about. It's like if your dog chewed on your colander and now your grapes are falling through when you try to wash them. So it's a damage there to that glomerular barrier. The degree correlates with disease progression. It is intrinsic to renal toxicity, and it causes inflammation. Here we are again, and scarring. Proteinuria causes scarring. That is why 1 to 2 is not good enough. It's just not good enough. It's got to come down. And so you keep fighting. If they tell you it's all right, no, it's not good enough. I'm going to keep fighting. I have a familial hypercholesterolemia. I have the genes for that. And so when I go to my doctor and they like start drawing stuff, or like my blood pressure, if it's not perfect, I'm like, no, that's not good enough. Draw it again. Like, you have to draw it again, I want you to be that way. Like, that's not good enough. I'm going to keep fighting. That's not good enough. I'm going to change my diet. If that didn't work, I'm going to change it again. I'm going to keep working and working and fighting until I figure out how to make this right. Okay, I kind of like this picture. My third child was like, Mom, what is that? That is the glomerulus. And it is amazing. It's amazing. The picture on the left. Well, both of them, but one's like the real thing, and then one's like the schematic, the cartoon picture of it. But so blood is filtered through the kidney through high pressure. It's called ultrafiltration. And so this is the filtration unit of the kidney. We want this to be really healthy because we want our blood to be filtered there. The glomerular filtration barrier, which you kind of see there on the right, it's got 3 layers, right? You want that to be strong and tight because it keeps things like protein, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. It keeps those things from coming through that barrier. And so in many of these protein spilling diseases, immune cells, like I said, can damage this barrier. I heard one doctor say sometimes people come to their doctor and the doctor's like, I don't know what's damaging the barrier. I don't know. But we know that if you have proteinuria that it is damaged. And so like I said, that you want those foot processes, that podocyte, to be healthy. So that's what we're trying to protect in these protein spilling diseases. You want it to be tight. You want that podocyte to wrap around and keep everything in there. Inflammation is going to damage that. And so this is another, just a picture of kind of how that glomerulus works. But you'll see here like the blood flow coming through, and you want that little yellow part to be tight. You want it to only let out small molecules like urea and creatinine. You want those to go out and go through the urea to go through the urine. You don't want protein and other nutrients like red blood cells to go through. Okay, so this is something everybody in the room should know. I actually put this in the second book because you should know just how important proteinuria is. So are y'all familiar with this? It's called the heat map. Have y'all ever seen this before? No, okay. So the heat map is, you can see on the left side, it's the GFR, the glomerular filtration rate. And so if it's in the green, that means that like, okay, prognosis is pretty good. We're probably not going to decline that far, okay? But then if you move over, you start getting into the red, that's where you're really going to start declining pretty fast. Now, if you look at stage 3A, you're like, well, 3A, I mean, that's not too bad. So yeah, it's not too bad. Look at like, so the albumin area is across the top, A1, A2, A3. Okay, and then go to the GFR 3A. You'll see like it's yellow if you're not spilling much protein, and it's orange if you're spilling more, but you hit the red not because of the GFR, but because of the proteinuria, you're hitting the red. So that proteinuria is a marker of increased, faster progression of kidney disease because of the inflammation, and it's damaging that podocyte, and it's scarring that glomerulus, which never comes back once it's scarred. Okay, so I think we've kind of hit that hard about which comes first. Heavy proteinuria, just to sum this up, leads to interstitial fibrosis, which is the scarring, inflammation, oxidative stress, which we talked about, that gets out of balance, right, in kidney disease, and increased progression of kidney damage. Okay, so we've talked a lot about protein in the urine. Another thing that you'll see when you go to your doctor, what about protein in the blood? Because we also see this. So albumin, dietitians hate albumin. They shouldn't, but they do. I've tried to redeem it a little bit, but they're like, why do people always say that albumin's a marker of nutritional status? It really isn't. It's a marker of inflammation, but it tells us something. So it's important. So we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater if it doesn't say what we think it's going to say about nutrition. It does a little bit. It's a little bit nutrition, but it's more an inflammatory marker. And so if you are looking at your labs and your albumin is dropping or is low, it could be that you're inflamed. And I'll give you some other labs. I'll tell you some other labs of how you'll kind of know all this. But it is a negative marker of inflammation, and it is a predictor of mortality in kidney disease. So you don't want this to be low. It is important. And when this is low, again, we go back to this sort of condition that I see a lot with people with kidney diseases, like you've got this malnutrition, proteinuria, cardiovascular disease sort of cycle going on with protein energy wasting. But it is a marker of accelerated cardiovascular disease. All these things go together. So you definitely, if this is low, a lot of times, especially, I don't know if anybody in here is on dialysis. I had one in the first class, but a lot of times if you're on dialysis, they'll say, eat more meat, eat more meat, eat more meat. Probably what I would tell you nowadays is, let's try to bring down that inflammation if your albumin's low. Because really eating more meat is not the answer to this. It's an inflammatory marker. And so then the other thing you can look at, especially if you're on dialysis and this is getting drawn regularly, is like if I had a patient who, let's say they were doing fine, and then all of a sudden the albumin dropped, the transferrin saturation dropped, and the hemoglobin dropped. Those are anemia markers. All those three things dropped, okay? And then the ferritin, which is your storage iron, starts going high, 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 high. That right there tells me you are inflamed. We need you to be eating more antioxidant foods, not necessarily more animal foods, to bring up the albumin level and to bring up the hemoglobin and the TSAT and to bring down the ferritin, because that's gonna fix that inflammatory process you have going on in your body. Okay, so we've talked about what inflammation is. It's a little confusing and super cyclical in the body, and it can come and go. You know, here's the other thing to know about it. You might be doing fine, and then you get the flu, and now you're inflamed, and all those things go out of whack. You can come back, like you can get back on your feet on that. There are certain acute things that happen to everybody. So just because you're a kidney patient doesn't mean that you don't get some sort of a, an acute condition. That happens. But you can come back just like everybody else does. You just need to keep eating the high antioxidant diet. But we're going to talk about things that we can do now. So how does that happen? What are you going to do? So we're talking about diet and supplements. So basic strategies to cool inflammation in your body. So we're going to fix the gut dysbiosis. We're going to fix the acidosis. We're going to fix the proteinuria. So one thing we're going to do is we are going to increase antioxidants in the diet. So now this is pretty interesting, and I didn't go into this in as much detail in the first class, but there's kind of two types of antioxidants. You can get antioxidants from outside your body by eating certain foods, but did you know that your body also makes antioxidants? So the ones that you get from the diet handle that oxidant. Remember our oxidant that's missing the electron in the outer shell and it's all angry? Dietary antioxidants handle those on a one-to-one basis. Like, I'm gonna fix this one, okay, I'm gonna fix this one. Endogenous, the ones that your body makes, can handle multiple oxidants, not just one. So we want a lot of endogenous antioxidants, but you still have to eat certain foods for your body to produce those. So, and then there's a certain pathway that we're going to talk about that you upregulate to produce those. So here we are back at the ORAC values. And so I went over this in the first class. So this is the oxygen radical absorbency capacity of a food. You don't have to know that. All you have to know is this is the total antioxidant capacity of a food. So how did they come up with this? They took a test tube and they would put in an oxidant, something that causes inflammation, and then they put in something that's susceptible to oxidation, and then they put in a food. And they said, how well does this food protect from oxidation? And then they give it a number. And so you can see here that fruits and vegetables are high on the list. They have really high numbers, but in the middle, you're gonna see something that I find very interesting, which is dried spices, which have a super, super high antioxidant capacity. And so for you, if you are a kidney patient, or really anybody, doesn't need to be eating a lot of sodium, but this is a great way to kill two birds with one stone. You are going to be able to lower your sodium intake because instead of pouring salt on all your food, you can put herbs and spices on there, and you're going to boost up your antioxidants in your diet, and you're going to decrease the salt in your diet. So I just find that pretty fascinating, and I love spices. You'll see that animal products are very low in antioxidant capacity. Okay, so that is the ones that you get from outside your body, but what about when your body makes antioxidants? So these are antioxidant enzymes, basically. So anytime you hear a word like ACE, like glutathione peroxidase, that's an enzyme. But these are glutathione peroxidase, superoxide dismutase, and catalase. Okay, and these are antioxidants that your body makes, and these handle multiple oxidants at one time. But you have to eat certain foods to be able to produce these. So you need selenium for glutathione peroxidase. So this is kind of interesting, something that I did in dialysis centers for low albumin. Okay, so I knew, hey, albumin is a marker of inflammation. So you know what I did? Because I was desperate to get my numbers up, I always had, for the most part, except one clinic, I had inner city clinics in Memphis. And so the people they didn't have a lot of money to buy a lot of healthy foods. And so one thing that I did, something that's super high in selenium is Brazil nuts. And so I would go around to every patient that had a low albumin, and I would give them a Brazil nut every day while they were on dialysis. And even at my house, I have a bag of Brazil nuts, and I tell everybody, my husband's laughing, who hadn't had theirs today, and I make everybody eat just one, and you'll get all the selenium you need. So everybody go home and buy yourself some Brazil nuts in the top picture, and go ahead and eat one of those every day to help your body make some glutathione peroxidase. But then these are other foods. As someone was asking me about iron food sources, so you do need those to make catalase, but one really interesting thing, the answer to her question was, you can get this thing called lucky ironfish if you're struggling with iron levels. It's just a little iron fish, and you just throw it into your food when you're cooking, and it releases iron out into the food, which is very similar to what they do in third world countries. If they're low in iron, they'll throw nails in water and let the nails release iron and rust into the water, and they'll drink it, just because they are low in iron. But, okay, so how do we make this happen? Did I miss a slide? No, okay. First let me talk to you about how these work. So if you see on the right, and you don't have to know this whole schematic, but I'm just kind of telling you how this works. So on the right is the oxygen, and it has to go through all these steps, right, to get to something neutral, which is at the end. And so you'll see here the glutathione peroxidase, the superoxide dismutase, all coming into this reaction to stop it and make it do the right thing it's supposed to do to get us to a place where now we've neutralized those antioxidants. So that's just kind of how it works. But then how does your body make these antioxidants? Well, you have to upregulate a certain pathway, which goes back to the foods that you have to eat to upregulate this pathway. It's called the NRF2 pathway, and that is how you make these endogenous antioxidants. And so we talked about the nutrients like selenium and iron and all those things, but most people don't know that or don't know the food sources of that, so this will kind of help out a little bit more. These are the food sources of those minerals I was showing you before that you need to make these endogenous antioxidants. So still, you got to eat the diet. And here's another two birds with one stone. You're eating the diet. These foods are high in antioxidants, so you're getting the dietary antioxidants, but you're also now boosting up your body to make its own antioxidants. And so things like cauliflower, broccoli, tomatoes, watermelon, green tea is fantastic. It's super antioxidant. Cherries, spices, things like that. Okay. Let's talk about supplements. So I am a food-first dietitian. You can't supplement away a bad diet, but there are certain supplements. I do recommend supplements. Most of them are very individualized to whoever I'm talking to and whatever they've got going on. And I typically ask, because some of them can be very expensive, like what I was talking about in the first, like those keto analogs, they're pretty expensive. I reserve those to somebody who's very late stage just because they are so expensive, and I know that supplements are, and so, but two that most people would really benefit from is vitamin D and turmeric. So I can kind of make a blanket recommendation of those. And somebody in the first class was saying they actually like to cook with turmeric, but you can also take turmeric. So anyway, vitamin D. So when there's two types of vitamin D in the body. Okay, so the vitamin D you eat is 25 well, I'm not even going to say the word, but it's 25 vitamin D. That is not activated. Your kidneys have to activate that into 125 vitamin D for your body to use. So if you get to a later stage of kidney disease, your doctor, a lot of times they won't put you on that till you're on dialysis just because the research is conflicted there. We don't have good research to know if we should supplement that. But you should, especially if your GFR is less than 30, supplement with vitamin D because at that point we know that levels are low. Here's what I would say. Most of the people I work with, levels are low, especially if you don't live somewhere like sunny Florida, because we get most of our vitamin D from the sun. So if you live somewhere that's cold all the time, or you're inside a lot, you probably are low in vitamin D, even if you're not a kidney patient. It comes up low all the time. And here's another thing I'll say too, is the levels for vitamin D, you're low if you're below 30. But I've worked with some rheumatologists. There was a young child who thought that they had rheumatoid arthritis, and this rheumatologist said they didn't. Like once he started checking, he realized that this child, they're just low in vitamin D and their joints were being destroyed. And so really most doctors will say it needs to be more towards the upper end of normal of that vitamin D. So I tell everybody, you need to get your vitamin D checked every year. I would get it checked every year, and I would make sure I was more towards, the 40, 50, 60 range, not the 30 range. But it's a potent anti-inflammatory. It reduces pro-inflammatory mediators. It increases anti-inflammatory cytokines, the good kind. So we know that in kidney disease, the good and the bad antioxidants get off balance. That oxidative stress gets off balance. So this increases the good ones, it decreases the bad ones, and there's evidence that it could even reduce C-reactive protein, that's a pretty good marker. You're never going to I don't think you would. I've never seen this on any lab work, anybody that I've worked with, but like to get like an interleukin level or something like that. But C-reactive protein, a lot of people kind of criticize it, but it's something that they can draw. It's pretty cheap, and it can tell you, if it's high, that you're inflamed and that you need to do something about it. So vitamin D, we think, could reduce C-reactive protein levels. Turmeric and curcumin. So curcumin is the active part of turmeric. So it's been long used in China and India to promote blood circulation, to remove blood stasis, to treat pain, to treat inflammation and other diseases. So it exerts an anti-inflammatory effect, regulating certain inflammatory signaling pathways and inhibiting the production of inflammatory mediators. So the signaling pathways are just how all those inflammatory markers talk to each other and everything. But you can find this in the spice, so you could cook with this, or you can take supplements. And pepper actually increases the absorption by about 2,000%. So if you are using the spice, sprinkle some pepper on there as well. I have found a supplement, so I'm getting older and my joints have issues, and it's good for that too. So if you're not a kidney patient, you're getting older and your joints are having issues, turmeric is really good. But I found a liposomal turmeric, which is pretty interesting. Liposomal supplements, they're wrapped in a liposome, which is basically kind of a lipid layer, and it looks a lot like the cell wall, so your body will absorb it better, because curcumin is pretty hard to absorb. So if you're doing it by diet, then add pepper. And if you are taking a supplement, sometimes those supplements have pepper, so that's nice, but you could also look for a liposomal supplement. Okay. So here we are again, because this is the grand finale of this one too, is the KDIGO 2024, because this made my whole year. These are the newest guidelines, global guidelines. So if you want to look for guidelines for kidney disease in America, you're going to look for KDOQI. If you're going to look for the global, you're going to look for KDIGO. So KDOQI was updated in 2020. Those were great. These are better. 2024 KDIGO. It says, advise people with chronic kidney disease to adopt healthy, diverse diets with higher consumption of plant-based foods compared to animal-based foods, lower consumption of ultra-processed foods. You know what I'd say? Everybody in the room should adopt that first one. More plant-based foods. If you look at cultures, there's these things called blue zones. How am I doing on time? Blue zones, where every one of those cultures eats a plant-based diet. Not completely vegan, but mostly plant-based. And these are people who live to be, they have a high number of centenarians, a high number of people who live to be over 100, but they're not like in America where people are, well, one of them is in America, in Loma Linda, California, but they're actually still active and doing things. They're not 100 in a nursing home in a bed. And then also consumption of ultra-processed foods, because those are highly addictive, highly inflammatory. By that I mean things in a package, fast food, junk food, all those things. Avoid those. And then use renal dietitians or accredited nutrition providers to educate people with chronic kidney disease. And I won't read the rest of that, but okay. So in summary, inflammation is prevalent no matter what the cause of kidney disease is, because kidneys remove toxins and it's going to increase inflammation levels in your body, including protein spilling diseases. Addressing inflammation is important because of the cardiovascular repercussions, because it increases progression of chronic kidney disease and it increases morbidity and mortality, just to name a few. And then I've given you some ideas to implement some of these strategies, to lower the inflammation in your body. One thing I didn't say in the first class, now that I'm thinking of strategies too, is if you're somewhere like this and you're wondering, like, because a lot of people will say to me, okay, well, I travel for work, how do I eat out, or something like that. So there's this app you can get on your phone called Happy Cow. It's purple. It's a little cow, and it'll tell you, you can put in it'll say search nearby, and you can just click that and it'll tell you everything right around you, even in an airport, plant-based options for you. If you're somewhere like the Mississippi Delta, where I grew up, you know what it says? Nothing found. So you have to bring your own food to those areas. So if you live in a rural area like the Mississippi Delta, nothing found. It won't work for you there, but it does work in most places. This is my book, which I'm going to give another one away, so I hope y'all paid attention because I won't ask a question. I meant to have 4, but I gave 2 away in the first class, and I accidentally only have 3, so I'm going to give away 1 more. And then if you would like to find me, here is how. I love hearing from people, so I'd love to hear from you. And so this is my last talk, so I do just want to reiterate again that I do appreciate being here. I am inspired by all of you. I'm inspired by seeing your children running around. I kept telling my husband and my son, look over there, that's some of those kids. That's some of those kids that have kidney disease, and look at what they're doing, and this is just so amazing. And if you're a parent, just hats off to you for being here and fighting for your kids. If you're an adult patient, hats off to you for being here, being proactive in your care. Always ask, always ask. Make sure it's your life, so you make sure that your healthcare practitioners are giving you what you need, and make sure you're out searching for what you need. So anyway, I think you're amazing, and I guess that's it. I don't know if someone's going to do or I can do the question. 2 more minutes. Oh, 2 more minutes.
Yeah. If you want to give out the book.
Okay, perfect. And then we'll break. Okay, so we don't have time. I thought I was doing good on time. Okay. Okay, this one's easy. I'm going to give y'all the easy one. True or false? Fiber improves the health of our microbiota. True. Right there. You won. Okay. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Oh, yeah, sure.
So, I've noted on some fiber supplements that they have a warning not for use for patients with chronic disease.
Sure. So he asked about fiber supplements. It says not for use for people with chronic kidney disease. I don't know which fiber supplements those are. Here's a great solution to that. Just eat fiber in food. So, because there is one that I like that's a type of acacia fiber, but even with that, food first. So always food first. Try to get your fiber from food. If you're not getting enough from food, then you could. It's so hard to find supplements that are safe for kidney disease. Just shoot me an email and I'll send you some ideas. But I would say food first. So really with anything, food first. And then if you need a supplement, then add the supplement.
So understanding food first, but I have another supplement question.
Sure.
And this one's about turmeric.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked into taking curcumin before,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really intimidating. All the different versions, doses, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Aside from the liposomal,
Mm-hmm.
possibly with pepper, is there anything else that I should focus on when I'm looking for a suitable turmeric supplement?
Yeah, so with supplements, any supplement, the only other thing you can do is just look to see if it's like third-party tested, and the validity of the company. So some good companies are Thorne, Pure Encapsulations. I love Thorne. I use them a lot. Thorne. Thorne. You do have to be careful, y'all. Some of these supplements out there, they'll say they have something in there, and they don't even have it in there. So you do have to be careful. So that's a good question. But yeah, just look for if it's third-party tested and if it's a good company. That's the main two things.
A question, what's the take-home magnesium supplement for kidney patients?
Okay. I'm going to tell you to be careful and have levels drawn for magnesium and make sure that you're not too high or too low. So that and that is actually something, that's actually a lab that I ask for a lot. Like when somebody says, hey, what labs should I get? I'll say, get me a magnesium level, especially if I can't figure out if they're still declining and I can't figure out why. Sometimes if magnesium is low, that can cause you to decline, but you certainly don't want it too high either because magnesium, and then there's a million different forms of magnesium. You can have magnesium threonate, you can have magnesium glycinate, you can have magnesium carbonate, you can have magnesium oxide. There's a million forms and they all do different things. Some of them cross the blood-brain barrier. Some of them cause you to sleep. Some of them cause you to poo. So you got to be real careful with magnesium. So what I would tell you to do is have a level drawn and then know what are you taking it for, because some people do take it if they're constipated and it works. There's magnesium-based phosphate binders. So I would use those, but in small amounts for if I had a constipated dialysis patient. I'd just add one to their little regimen and we'd go from there, but we drew magnesium levels to make sure. So I would tell you.
For neuropathy, because I have really bad neuropathy.
Okay.
They suggested, but then when I got the bottle, it said, be careful, you have a kidney disease.
Right. So just get levels drawn regularly. When you go have labs drawn, ask them to draw a magnesium level. And if it's normal, then I would say you're safe. But definitely, that's one of those you got to watch out for. Yeah.
One more question.
I understand the best way to consume is
your recommended way to cook?
Okay, so some things are better raw. I say do both. Here's why. Tomatoes, you actually get more nutrients if they're cooked. You can get more lycopene and everything out of those if they're cooked. Mushrooms, you really shouldn't eat raw. You should always cook those. Broccoli, you should eat raw because there's something in it called myrosinase that you kill. It's an enzyme in it that you kill when you cook it. You can eat it both ways, but I eat a lot of raw broccoli because you want it. So there's a nutrient in it you want out of it called sulforaphane, which really is super anti-inflammatory. It blocks cancer cells, all these wonderful things, but if you cook it, you kill the enzyme in it that helps you absorb that. So I would say do both, okay? And then if you're cooking, okay, so in the South, we like to just boil something to death. We like to just kill it. Don't do that. Cook it until it's just like lightly sauteed or something, because you just leach all the nutrients out into the water. So, but that's a good question. All right. Thank y'all so much.